Welcome to No Apologies. I'm Dana Lash. I think it's fair to say that we're living through, I think, really the most perilous time in American history since the Revolution in terms of a threat to our First Amendment rights. The left, who has always dreamed of shutting down speech from the right, or really anybody who disagrees with them, frankly, I think they found their silver bullet, so to speak. And that is the coronavirus. People are being killed by misinformation is the argument that the administration is using to suppress your First Amendment rights. But the Delta variant, according to data, it's more transmissible, but way less deadly. And that's a good thing, because, see, people are being killed by misinformation. That's always the reason that the government's going to give in order to impose any kind of draconian law or take away fundamental rights, like actually censoring your right to freely speak. And make no mistake, it is not going to end with censoring our right to freely express opinions and share them with others about coronavirus policies. Next, there's going to be a new crisis, I'm sure, that is killing people, and the reason people are being killed, they will say, is because, yes, misinformation about said new crisis. For example, they're already changing the language around climate change, and it's now called global climate emergency, and the climate emergency is killing people. They're already claiming that, and so there can be no more debate, no more opinions, and if you disagree, you're killing people too. We, the government, will tell you how to solve the problem, and we, the government, will censor any dissent. And we'll do that by calling honest opinions and legitimate debate on the climate emergency. We'll label that misinformation. And why must we censor this misinformation? Because it's killing people. Now, I believe this climate emergency that's killing people is coming next, but the point is there's always going to be another crisis, because crisis, Democrats and Western governments have discovered, is the best way to control you. And when they can't convince you of their arguments for what they intend on doing, they'll just simply declare an emergency and say people will die unless you do exactly what they say. And if you disagree and you express any different opinion, then you yourself are now guilty of spreading misinformation and a murderer, and that means they can censor you, because lives are on the line. And the proof that people are being killed, well, apparently they don't owe you that. They're not going to tell you. They're the government. You do what they tell you. And if you disagree, they'll call that misinformation and take your voice and even your livelihood away from you. Just ask the people who've been deplatformed, like evolutionary biologist Eric Weinstein, who has simply asked questions about the vaccine, and many others who are silenced or banned by YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at the request of our government. Finally, there is an excellent series called CHERNOBYL on Netflix. It's about the infamous disaster at the Soviet nuclear facility. And it's incredibly relevant for the moment because the parallels to the WUHAN virus disaster are eerily similar. It shows how censorship makes dealing with a crisis not only impossible, but it makes everything worse. Now, I'm not sure that this was the director's intention when they actually made the series, but what the story demonstrates is how in the Soviet Union, thanks to communism's censorship of free speech, scientists could not say what needed to be said about the Chernobyl disaster. They were afraid of the Soviet government. The government had sole control over who could speak and who could be heard, and you say the wrong thing to Gorbachev, and then something that he didn't want to hear, like a Russian nuclear facility is at a meltdown, that if left unaddressed, it's going to kill potentially tens of thousands of people, well, you would find yourself in very deep trouble. So the Chernobyl crisis got much worse because it could not be dealt with, honestly, because the communist regime didn't want the nuclear disaster to make them look incompetent. They just wanted it to go away. However, what needed to be said was this: if the Chernobyl reactor was left unaddressed, its meltdown was going to cause its radioactive core to sink into the ground and very likely poison the water supply of Russia. And that unpleasant reality, that was being labeled misinformation at the time. It needed to be said to Soviet government leaders. Similarly, a worldwide disaster has unfolded with the coronavirus, which ironically originated in another communist country. And it's been made harder to deal with thanks to censorship in China. And tragically, if the Biden administration has their way, it seems that same government censorship is coming here next. More debate, more information, more heterodox thinking is what is needed to beat this pandemic, not less. Challenging the consensus from arrogant government bodies, that's not spreading information, that's your right as a citizen. It is your right as a citizen and your duty as a citizen. It is about the power of the marketplace of ideas that allows out-of-the-box solutions so we can better negotiate the pandemic going forward. So, on misinformation, you have Jen Psaki, the White House communications director, Biden himself, others in the administration, They have to know better than to stifle free speech and debate. But why are they doing this still? To silence your right to disagree forever, all in the name of stopping people from being killed. Just a small sacrifice to pay, right?